New topic. There are several unbeaten teams that are ranked outside the top 25 currently. Auburn, Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, USF, and Wisconsin all are undefeated and sit outside the top 10. Some of them you could argue deserve. Some of them you could argue don't even deserve to be in the top 10. Ohio State, Virginia Tech, USC are all teams with one loss. They're currently in the top 10. So the question I'm going to pose is, which of these teams is the best? Which of the teams that are undefeated but sit outside the top 20, or the top 10 are the best? Mike, what do you say?
I'm going to go with Auburn in this case. And Auburn doesn't necessarily have a bunch of quality wins, but they went on the road in a hostile environment, Tennessee, and was able to get a win. And they beat West Virginia at home. And they've looked strong. They're very balanced on offense. They rush for 253 yards and pass for 259 yards. So based on what I'm seeing on paper and based on the results in terms of wins, I think they are the best team. I think there could be a good case made for Iowa. But I think at this point in the season and looking at Auburn's schedule and looking at how they've played so far and their balance on offense, I'm going to choose the Auburn Tigers.
Which you said there can be a case made for Iowa. I think the Auburn selection is a good selection, especially what they did this weekend at Tennessee. I know Tennessee isn't the best team in the SEC, but going there and getting a win is a quality win. But I'm going to make a case for Iowa very quickly, then I'll go to Jordan. Iowa has one of the top 10 pass efficiency defenses in the country. They got one of the top 10 rush defenses in the country. They have the second longest winning streak in the nation. They've gone on the road, beaten a top 5 team by 11 points. They've beaten Arizona, who's also a quality team, and Iowa State. They're another BCS conference team. So I'm going to say Iowa for those reasons. Jordan, who do you say?
I think, I want to say, almost throw out, USF in there because they have looked good and they have won the last 2 games without their fearless leader, Matt Grothe, who's done for the year. They've got a great quarterback in B.J. Daniels, he's basically taken over and really added another asset to their offense. But they haven't had a quality win besides Florida State. They play Sisters of the Poor their first 3 games of the season. Then they go on to play Syracuse last week, which, we're just not quite sure. Syracuse, we don't know really what to think of them. Could they get to 6-6 maybe? But that's neither here nor there. I think it's between Auburn and Iowa. Auburn, I know, has come, I think they're 3 points. Don't quote me on that number. I know they're very close to reaching the total amount of points this season that they have scored. Last season, sorry. Let me reword that. They scored as many points last season through 12 games, and they are almost up to that number now, which says a lot about their offense and their defense. They're not getting into these shootouts. 26-22 I consider a quality offense and defensive game. It's when the scores get up into the 30s and the 40s that they start looking less respectable. So I'm going to say Auburn is up there, but then again, you really have to go. And this might seem a little biased, but Iowa has just looked very good. And you look at the competition that Iowa's had. We've played better against the better teams, actually. And, we had to squeak them out against Arkansas State and escape against UNI. But, regardless, I think, you could put Iowa and Auburn up there. Auburn because their offense has improved. Iowa because the defense hasn't skipped a beat from last year.
And part of the thing you could add to Auburn's case is you always got to look ahead to the next couple of games. And, Mike, let me know about that Auburn schedule because it's pretty favorable coming up to the next few games. I mean, you talking about earlier before the show how they could start off 7-0.
Yeah, they could easily be 7-0. They play at Arkansas and then Kentucky at home. After that, it gets very tough. They play LSU, Ole Miss, Furman sandwiched in there should be a win, and then they end the season at Georgia and then at home against a very, very good Alabama team. So it'll be interesting to see where they go, but I think there's a very realistic chance that they're going to be 7-0 going into that game against LSU.
Some weird things can happen in the Iron Bowl.
You never know. I mean, I don't want to
know. I think Alabama could make an argument for #1 in the country right now.
Right.
But the Iron Bowl rivalry games. Look what Georgia Tech did to Georgia last year at the end of the year.
And speaking of that very, very good, as I'll quote you, Alabama team, Alabama goes to Oxford to take on Ole Miss, number 20 Ole Miss, this Saturday. I don't know why Ole Miss is still ranked, but regardless, it's 2 ranked teams playing each other in the SEC. And Jordan, we'll start with you. Your preseason pick to win the SEC West, Ole Miss, are they going to beat Bama?
I do not think so. I think Alabama's going to win this game. As I mentioned right now, they can make an argument to be #1 in the nation. Their offense hasn't really seemed to miss much without, Glenn Coffey and John Parker Wilson, who both, are now in the NFL. McElroy's come in. He's done an outstanding job. Julio Jones, we all knew what he's capable of. He's out there. He's got that experience. He's learned a lot, and he's made himself into a better receiver than you see some of the freshman mistakes come into play last year. I think Alabama wins. Obviously, if we had to do picks now, I would go with Bama the way they are played. But, Ole Miss still isn't a bad team. They're just not quite what everyone thought they were going to be, I don't think. I really don't think South Carolina, despite how they've played in their schedule, is that great of a team. I think Ole Miss should have, without a doubt, won that game. And basically, because of that, I think Alabama will take care of business.
Mike, will the Tide keep on rolling?
I think so. Talking about what they had to replace at Alabama, Mark Ingram's done a great job coming in. He's got 467 yards rushing through his first few games. And like you said, Greg McElroy, he's done a fantastic job managing and leading that team and not making mistakes. But I want to say this, Alabama needs to go in with a bit of caution. This is one of these games that we're all saying, hey, Alabama's going to win. They're clearly the better team. But this is one of these games where I think Ole Miss will be prepared. They have a loss to South Carolina, but they'll be prepared, and Alabama needs to come in and focus on their strategy. This is one of these games where we can all be looking next week if Ole Miss pulls the upset and say, man, this was another game that we just looked over because Alabama played so well and Ole Miss hasn't proven anything yet. I do think Alabama wins, but Ole Miss, I think they're going to keep it close at home, and this is one of these games that we need to watch out for and not just automatically say Alabama's going to dominate.
And I won't automatically say Alabama's going to dominate, but Alabama's won 18 of the last 20. Alabama has one of the best defenses in the country. Alabama has a very good case for number one in the country, which we won't go into that because I made that case last week for Alabama. But Alabama, oh boy, I am really high on this team. I love them. I picked them to win the SEC West preseason, and they're going to have to win games like this if they want to win that and then get to the SEC title game. But Bama, they've already beaten a top 10 team. Ole Miss has beaten nobody. We did talk about how they haven't really beaten anybody, but yet this is a game, they'll get fired up for it. They're going to throw out a few Houston Nut gadget plays, but really this Alabama defense is very disciplined, and their offense also not too shabby either. So I really like them to win this game in Oxford, and boy, you never know if LSU maybe pulls off the upset this weekend, Alabama may be the number one team in the country. And speaking of LSU, big-time game this weekend in Baton Rouge as LSU, the number 4 team in the country, will take on number 1 Florida. Anybody want to take a stab at how many night games LSU's won in a row? At home.
At home. Okay.
In Tiger
Stadium. I know they lost last year.
In Tiger Stadium.
In Death Valley, 9, maybe.
Mike?
I'll go like 15.
31.
Jeez.
31. There are 4 words that strike fear into the hearts of every SEC team. Night game, Tiger Stadium. But will the Tigers pull it off? It'll be a very tall task. We don't know if Tim Tebow will be back or not, but you got to think that guy is going to be back for this game this Saturday, even if he hardly practices this week. Mike.